welcome to Redmond Reviews. Chris Garlock with my kitty cat Orisha here for all you cat lovers out there. We've had some of Michael's puppy dogs, so we thought we'd give some equal time to the feline lovers out there. So
great.
Plus, I don't think she's going anywhere. Anyway, and of course, Michael Redmond, 9 Professional. Michael, how you doing?
Fine.
All right, so we are into game 12.
Yep.
Game 12. We're just cooking right along here.
Mm-hmm.
Last time we had the Colicious game. What have we got cooked up for us today?
Well, we're going to start with variation of the mini Chinese opening, and so we're going to have another of these 3-3 invasions, and it's going to be a really interesting opening. I think it's going to be an interesting opening, and it's one of the games that ends in a bust. So it's an unusual game in that way, in that Black just gets killed and resigned.
I don't think we've had one of those yet, have we? I think we have
games where someone gets killed, but usually there's still a half point or something like that.
Yeah. I don't think we've had an actual crash yet. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Well, it was pretty close most of the time, but apparently Black felt it was behind.
Cool. All right. Let's. I think that's enough for that. Good. All right.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
Let's take a look.
So this is the opening. So this is a position that comes up a lot. Like when Black plays this star point and 3-4 point, quite often White does play 2 star points. And so we get to this point, which is where it branches off. Like sometimes AlphaGo will play a Shimari in the lower right corner, a corner enclosure. Sometimes it plays this one. Sometimes it plays one to the right. Like game number 1 is the game where Black played the mini Chinese that is one to the left of this stone, and we saw White playing all those attachments to reduce it. So that was, I have memories of that one. And so White jumps into the 3-3 point. Like you would expect a human player to play at A or B. Those are the most common moves.
Split the side, yeah.
Yeah. But AlphaGo just does this. This is a point where AlphaGo has a lot of variations it likes to play. And it's not really limited to just one, and even in the same game position, it will make various choices. Like this is the most common move that it plays, and something like this will happen. And maybe in this case, it would just extend on the side. Like it can continue on the upper right corner, but when it has a moyo like this, it will often play in the middle of the side with this move. Or Black can just extend, which could turn into the same variation as this one. But when Black extends, sometimes White will jump, which is really strange. Locally, this is supposed to be good for Black. This move here was the Tetsuji, this one, hitting the head of the 2 stones. And so this is supposed to be good for Black, but AlphaGo has played this one too. In fact, there's 2 games with this exact opening. And so the next move for White is either A or B.
Okay.
And I think White won both of those games. So it's really strange that we have this variation of the Joseki, which you can find it in Joseki books. And it will always say that this is good for Black. This is like it's a failure diagram. It's a bad diagram for White. But AlphaGo is playing it in some of the games, and it has a pretty good winning record too.
And a failure because it just looks so cramped for White and so big.
So many
for Black,
stones
right?
on the second line, like it's a very low position, which is supposed to be painful for White.
It looks painful.
Looks painful, but strangely enough, it doesn't work out as a win for Black. It's something I don't completely understand, because I still think this is bad for White, but it's in the Go games it's not ending up as a win for Black. But that didn't happen in this game. In this game, Black played this Hane, which is the human Joseki. It's the Joseki that is most commonly played by humans in history, and so it's actually a bit unusual for AlphaGo. So let's see what I did. This is an example of the Joseki you find in Joseki books. So people have often said that it's an innovation of AlphaGo to be not playing that Hanetsugi and playing away instead. But actually, this Hanetsugi is only played, and I've marked the board. This Hanetsugi is only played when there's a black stone on the side, such as B. And usually you have some extra extensions on the side when white's going to jump into A anyway in a human game. So that's the way humans have been using this Joseki. And when there is a black stone at B, sometimes it makes sense to play this Hanetsugi. I'm talking about this move.
Right.
So it makes sense that white doesn't play it in this case, because when there's no black stone on the side, white does have some potential to attack black. If black plays here, then black's going to be strong, and white will just continue like this. And at some later stage, like if black plays here, then later on this could become a good move. But, and it would still be threatening a cut. So if well-timed, the Hanetsugi here can still be a good move.
Okay.
Otherwise, if white plays like this on the side, this is actually what I'm calling the standard pincer for AlphaGo. AlphaGo likes to have a stone 3 spaces away from this black wall. And this was happening in a number of different games that I've seen AlphaGo play. It either has a stone, it likes to play a pincer on the 3rd line like this, or on the 4th line at A. And the next follow-up move will be a peep at B. And so this is the distance that AlphaGo likes to keep away from that wall, which is kind of a good distance to be safely distant from the wall at the same time as setting up the next attack. So this is the distance that AlphaGo likes to pincer that wall. And actually, we're going to see that in the actual game. Black plays an attachment on top.
Did a human being ever played that move in a million years?
Well, it's actually pretty close to things that have happened, because if we're looking at the lower right area only, this is a mini Chinese opening type thing.
Yeah.
And I was saying that instead of jumping into the upper right corner, often white would play something like this. And we've seen people play this kind of move.
Okay.
And the intention that black has is quite similar in the actual game. For instance, what happened in the game is that white pulled back and black jumped here. So this is already very close to what humans have been doing.
Yeah, I get it, but I still, when I see the move on the board, it just, I don't know.
Well, the other variation would be if white plays the Hane, which would be a stronger response, but then black can curl on this side. And because of the wall and the fact that there's a reasonable distance between what the stones black has just played and the wall in the upper right, it gives black a nice sort of territory there.
Yeah, that is actually pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. And so this is working well to attack the white group. And so that's my explanation of why white pulls back here. But now this is looking a lot more like a variation that we're seeing in human games.
Right.
And so white, it's really interesting the way AlphaGo will always, every time AlphaGo wants to crawl the 3rd time, which is working well with the fact that it doesn't play the Hanetsugi on the right. It doesn't play this move on the right. It makes it reasonable for white to be wanting to crawl for the 3rd time, because otherwise covering on the 2nd line would be forcing for black. So there's speed there. But the timing of this move is interesting. Like if it's so important for white, why doesn't white play the crawling move now? The fact that white waits for a while, almost playing it when it thinks you've forgotten about that, is sort of interesting.
So
I don't really know why it's important to play it now instead of playing it earlier. It's probably going to be forcing in both cases, because the Hane on the 3rd line would be big. So black extends. But of course, and then white slides. Yeah, this is another interesting move. For black, covering at A was going to be a big point. So like if white plays something like this, black can cover on the 3rd line to get very nice shape. So that's why white slides. And also white has some eye space. Like if black comes from this side, white will have no trouble making ice space. And actually, black's a bit thin there in the lower right. So black plays on the left. Okay. And white jumps in. This is a point where I would play at A, because and this is going to change how the game develops, because the reason I want to play at A is let's just put a variation. When white plays this exchange, this reduces the impact when black jumps into the 3 point here, because black is going to be forced to a low position when black. And so it's okay for white to play from the left there. So it reduces the impact when black jumps into the 3 point. And so that's why I would want to play once here. But the fact that white doesn't do that, it means that black's going to attack the lower left corner now. And so that's in the cards now. And so that means that that's where the first fight of the game is going to start. And it implies that white feels that it's okay to allow that to happen. And so we're going to see that happen, and it's going to be very difficult, but I'm going to try to explain how it plays this extension. And so this exchange, starting with white A forcing B, and then white making the extension here, it sort of shows how white really wants to play that move on the third line on the right side, because this is setting up the peep at C. So white's looking at that black wall and saying it doesn't have any ice, and white's setting up to attack it. And again, I should say that the distance white likes to stay away from the wall is this three space distance, and it apparently thinks this is the best distance to set up a strong attack. And of course, white's completely alive now. We can call that a living white group on the right side. And so black jumps into the corner, which is the natural follow-up from the marked move. And white covers. Black crawls. So when this happens, for instance, if white bumps against the black stone here, black can play the hanesugi. Oh, sorry. What am I doing? Black plays the hanesugi and something like. And when black cuts here, white cannot capture in a ladder or a geta or anything, and so it's much more troublesome for white. This, like, even if white pushes through here, black's alive in the corner and white's sort of split up into weak groups.
That's troublesome. That looks like a disaster.
It's getting worse. Yeah. So this is really bad for white.
Yeah, it's just ugly.
Yeah. And so bumping against there, in this case, it just is bad because it leaves that weakness of the cut on the fifth line here. And so white can't do that. So white has to pull back, which makes it a lot easier for black in the corner.
Yeah.
And so black does play the hanesugi. And you might expect white to connect here, but black's going to cover here. And again, black is still maintaining an advantage on the lower side. And that covering on at B, it really makes a big difference there. And also black's alive in the corner, and white's group is not very strong. So this is what black is aiming at. And so AlphaGo crawls. AlphaGo sort of likes this move more than humans do. Like humans will play this move sometimes too, but AlphaGo seems to really like to play this move.
It's a second line move, and we're sort of allergic to second line moves.
Well, of course, if black plays in the corner, it's a lot better than connecting on the left, because white's getting to curl up to make some territory on the lower side. So black has to pull back once, and then white usually would connect. But white's playing once here and saying that if black covers here, white's going to connect. After which this kind of fight might happen. And B is actually a shape move. It's a vital point in black's shape because it's looking at the weakness at C. So if, for instance, if black plays here, this is a really awkward shape here where black has a lot of weaknesses. And so I'm expecting maybe black, I would play here. If I was black, I would just solidly bump against white. And something like this, it's sort of demonstrating what white's plan is to start a fight on the lower side and start to surround or at least move out into the upper part of the left side while this running fight develops. So white's going to be running out from the lower side and sort of surrounding territory on the left side of the board. So that's white's game plan. But again, it's also the way I would play with black, because black has gotten a lot of profit in the corner.
Sure.
So that's okay. And in the lower side, it looks like black is going to be attacking. So black can attack white a little bit on the lower side, and probably the lower right area, that area in the lower right part of the board, is probably going to turn into black's territory.
Right.
And so that would be my game plan with black. If black tries to counterattack here, it might not be so good, because white's going to be trading to the right, and the lower side is really a very important area for black. So if white can sacrifice a little bit on the left there by allowing black A and be able to get some profit on the lower side, this would be really good for white, because that's basically, the lower side is the only area where black is building territory. So black doesn't want to make a trade in which black gets something in the center for giving white the lower side.
Too easy.
Yeah, so this is what I would expect. And this is the game move. So this is really interesting, that black does not decide between A and B, or does not fix the shape there. And there's a difference, because depending, for instance, black is offering to allow white to connect underneath. This would be playing into black's hands, because black would just cover from top and is building thickness there. And still, white's a bit cramped, because there's still that cut at B. So black's plan would be to eventually force white to connect at B. Like if white played somewhere elsewhere, black could play something like this, and white would end up connecting at that dame point. And we can see black is accomplishing the idea of building on the lower right area. So black's building a moyo there still. So, and black would have potential attack against the whole white group. So this is black's plan.
And I think this actually, answers your question. I mean, humans don't like playing on the second line, because you often wind up with this sort of useless, string of stones on the second or third line. You have to know what you're doing with them.
You have to know how to follow up with it. And so white does not connect underneath, and white is starting this stuff on the right side. And so just to go back a bit, I was saying I wanted to play here, and I was suggesting this and this variation. And this would be sort of forcing the flow of the game. It would be taking more control. So the way black played is just leaving possibilities of A and B, and it makes it more fluid. And in this case, the drawback is that if black does stuff like that, let's see, if black does stuff like this now, actually the lower side, the white move here, is more important. It's just, this area is the one area that black was trying to surround.
Right.
And if white gets territory there, then then getting some extra in the lower left corner is not going to be enough for black. It's just too much to allow white to play extra moves here. And so, although black it's more fluid in the lower left, black has more flexibility, white has more flexibility too, because white doesn't necessarily have to answer black when black plays something in the lower left area. So there's a question of, now if black plays here, I was showing you this variation where white crawls and black gets to make a thick shape.
Sure.
So that's sort of part of my explanation for this move, because white is trying to avoid that, even with just this one exchange. But if white can get something like this, then obviously it's going to be much more difficult for black to close it off.
Right.
So that's the idea here. And so black plays the slide. Now this is a really tricky move.
Whoa, sneaky.
That's sneaky. Black is sort of hinting at the possibility to connect underneath. Like if white plays something like this, then when black plays here, it's a good exchange, because now black can connect underneath next. So that's going to change what happens on the lower side. If white covers, then black's going to push through. And this is a bit troublesome for white, because white will eventually have to play both A and B to save those stones on the side. And so black's going to get the advantage in the center.
Yeah, that looks annoying.
So yeah, so you wouldn't imagine white's next move. It's a very surprising kind of move. White plays.
Yeah, that's the one I was looking at. Nope.
So what is this move? It's locally it is a kind of a vital point. It's a key point
Sure.
that is looking at the wedge, at the marked wedge. So how exactly is that going to turn out? This looks like a natural move for black to extend.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that because it's not the move that was played in the actual game, but this is the variation that I'm going to show. And I'm going to say this is what white's going to do. This is a point where I looked at a whole bunch of variations, even for this black move. And it's sort of hard to say, and it's something that I would be interested in seeing what the network data says.
Mm.
I'm going to say that white's going to wedge here once and pull back, and that this exchange, it gets rid of the push through and cut, because now black cannot cut there. I think it's a geta, at least. It's a net.
It's a geta, right?
Not quite a ladder, but it is a net. So it's that's good enough for
white.
It's
a geta. Yeah, it's a geta. That's nice. That's very clever.
And so this is going to be good for white because white is playing on both sides. And black is sort of isolated there. So this is going to be good for white. And so black just pushes through here. So black is going to push through and actually didn't cut immediately. But the idea is that black is looking at the cut there and doesn't want to lose that option.
Mm.
And white just covers on top. So this is looking really nice for white. So it was actually a very good move. If black cannot answer that, and white is going to be able to play this point, then it's sort of locally it's just perfect for white.
Mm-hmm.
And if black just cuts here, black's going to capture some stones on the side, but it's not really all that important. Like white still has a potential squeeze with crawling at A. White would lose the semi-I, but white would be able to squeeze black a little bit there. And also white has a forcing move at B if white wants to start something in the lower right area. And of course, white has this thickness towards the left side. So this is what white is trying to do here. And black cuts. And so this ends up being a trade. And I think it must be, my feeling is that this is good for white. So with white, I would sort of want to just capture these stones with the feeling that it's good for white, right? But actually, black's going to play here. Black gets a lot of territory too. With the assumption that white has gained something here, this is the way I would play, just to sort of make some real territory out of that, the assumed advantage that white has. When I look at this position, actually it's pretty close. So maybe it's a fairly even game.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not as good as I was thinking it was.
The white stones look a little cramped to me.
Yeah, well, those were stones like white ignored black's jump. Let's see if I can get there. Black's jump here. There we go. Yeah. Black's jump here. And so white was going to be attacked in the lower left corner. And so the fact that sorry, that was a mistake. Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to use special techniques and it didn't really work.
Oh, your shortcuts.
I'm learning to shift click. Okay. So I was sort of expecting white to be pushed around a little bit in the lower left area, but just because white has been playing an extra move on the right side.
But I bet white didn't like that. I bet white ignored it, didn't he?
White ignored it, right. White played here in the corner. Now it's going to be really difficult for black to kill this group outright. For instance, if black plays here, this is the strongest attack. But white can peep here once, this kind of thing. And And this is actually a living shape. Like white can make two eyes with B and C.
I like this. This is consistent with what you were saying earlier about this whole area being the biggest area. So it makes sense that white wouldn't want to just give black that territory.
So black plays the attachment. So this is obviously if white tries to live with everything, it's going to be more cramped. It's going to be more cramped than this variation I was showing, right?
Plus a little bit unreasonable, right?
Yeah. So white plays the hane, and this is going to be a trade.
Right.
So black at this point has established a trade. Black can capture the stone on the left. So black returns to the left side. So this is what I didn't want to happen. This is the thing that I was trying to stop when I wanted to play another move on the left side.
Sure.
Black can save these stones. And the white group is eyeless now, so I didn't like that.
Right.
But I guess AlphaGo feels okay. And black plays a pincer here. Now again, this is threatening to play a hane there to cut white. Let's mark it. Black is threatening this cutting point here.
Yeah.
So white has to deal with that. So like if white plays something like this, black can play here and make a double hane to cut white off. So white plays here. And then black switches to so black's taking the profit on the lower side. So this is a big move, and it's usually sente. Like after black plays here, you would usually expect white to be playing something on the right side to save that corner group.
Yeah.
But no, that's not what happened. So
of course not.
Just judging from what happened in the game and how it changed the game so much, I'm going to say that the left side is much more important, and I would play here. And I think even in an actual game, I would see that too. I think I would actually play here if I was in this position. And what's going to happen is white is going to answer probably, and black can push here. This is sort of forcing, and black's just going to add stones to the left side to build a position here. Black has some good follow-up moves at B or C. So black still has good moves to continue playing on the left side. White has a big move at A. I would expect white to be playing A fairly soon. But the point is black can follow up with B, which is probably forcing it against the corner. And then C would start an attack on the white stones in the lower left. So black would have the initiative in this game, and would be, if black does get the points like B and C, black would be building some territory that is at least 20 points on the left side. And so that would be 30. Black would still have close to 40 points in all. And white's territory would be something like that too. So black could use an attack in the center, and black does have that little wall on the upper side. I mean, in the upper right area. It looks like a pretty close game to me. I would be expecting the game to be decided in later stages. So I wouldn't be feeling so bad with black in this case.
It would be pretty normal too.
So in the game, black takes the profit here, which seems to be a normal move. But when white plays here, this changes everything. And it's really strange to see. Like, it didn't hit me immediately looking at this position that this is a win for white. But I think actually at this point, white already has a lead.
No kidding.
And after this, we're going to see white playing fairly conservatively. Like, white doesn't really do very much after this. White's just connecting up all of its stones, and it ends up with a winning position. So white is playing very solidly after this, and goes ahead to win. So I would say at this point, it's just from hindsight, I would say that it's looking good for black or for white already.
For white. So where did that turn?
So that was the move that I was just talking about. This move. I think this is an even game.
Okay.
And so the left side, intuitively, the left side is big, and making this this variation, this diagram for it, sort of reinforces my judgment there, and it makes me think that black should have played on the left side.
It's interesting because when black plays on this side with this, that's a big chunk of territory too. But it's
a big chunk of territory. It's a big chunk of territory. You would it's another move that would be sort of natural to play for black. It's a big move there, right?
I mean, it's territory, countable territory plus some back profit if and when he decides to kill the corner, right? I mean,
which is going to happen pretty soon.
Right.
That's going to happen pretty soon.
Right. So it's interesting that the C, well, the big Kima, but I do see how it really does change the dynamic of the game. All of a sudden, it looks really white over on that part of the board.
Yeah, it's a big area. I've marked up the board at this point a little bit. White's still protecting against the weakness at A.
Yep. Yeah.
But this covering on the second line here, it might not be looking so big, but it's actually putting more pressure on the black stones.
Mm-hmm.
And white actually has some forcing moves at B or C, which will make some trouble in the corner. Like B would
corner, yeah.
Stone at B, white could kill the corner, or with the stone at C, it would be a ko. So there's this added potential to attack the corner, which is going to make it really difficult for black to make eyes on the left side. So that's a floating weak group that black has to deal with.
Just let me ask a question. Is something factoring into this whole thing the fact that what you talked about earlier, with does white also have an eye on the black wall in the upper right corner?
Yes, definitely. That's going to happen pretty soon too.
Okay.
Yeah. And so black takes the lower right corner.
Do you have something better for black at this point?
There's no other area in the board where black can make territory at this point. Like black's the only potential territory that black has is this lower right corner. This move is really big. It's sort of like it's about 20 points at least, but it also makes a slight difference in the strength of white's right side group. So it's a really big move. It's if I wasn't going to play here, I wouldn't have played that move before this one. So it's a natural follow-up to capturing the one stone on the left. And it makes sense that if black is going to go for territory, black might as well go all the way and take. So now this is a lot of territory, and it looks like it could be about 40 points.
So you just have to take all the cash and then try and erase as much of white's area as possible.
Right. Yeah.
No problem.
And so white start now. This is just the standard way that AlphaGo is going to attack the black wall.
Sure.
And black doesn't want to connect there. This is also sort of typical of AlphaGo. It's actually quite often it does not connect against this peep. So black plays this exchange, and is going to avoid having to connect at B. And so black plays there. This left side group is in trouble too. Like I was saying, it's very hard for black to make eyes on the left side. So black is adding a stone to this group. And then white cuts. So at this point, like if I was white.
It's starting to look like one of my games, Michael. This can't be good.
It can't be good. Like if I was white, I would be thinking of going for the kill.
Yeah, which kill?
Yeah.
I mean,
which kill? Yeah. I would be drooling to go after one of those black groups. But AlphaGo just doesn't do that. Like it back runs away. And with this move, what white is doing is basically white is just sort of connecting up in the center. White's not really kill black, but white's sort of allowing black to make a life.
There's no reading necessary, right? It's just all shape.
White is just playing very, very solidly here.
Yeah.
Doesn't really go after the black group here. Like this is a point where white could have been more serious about attacking this black group.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, at this point, white still has the opportunity to play here once, which would be a much more strong attack. But white's just calmly connecting up white's own stones and allowing black to run out there. And we can see black is still playing slightly adventurous moves like this one, trying to attack white in reverse almost. White's stones are fairly strong. They can make eyes if they need to. So it's not really that effective. And white's just calmly parrying the attacks that black is doing. And again, we can see that black isn't really wanting to answer white here. Black is trying to play forcing moves. Black's just playing all these forcing moves here. And white's answering every time. White's just making sure of white's connection in the center here. And one gets the impression that all white has to do is connect up all the stones. All white seems to want to try to do. And of course, white is getting profit out of this attack and that black's territory in the lower side area is
It's
reducing.
shrinking. Yeah, I was noticing. But where's white's territory?
White isn't even bothering to make any territory.
Territory. Who needs territory?
Yeah, who needs it? White starts the attack on the black group on the left, and this black group does indeed have a problem with eyes.
Yes, it does.
And
it doesn't have any, I don't think.
Right.
Zero eyes at this point.
And this is a point where you might expect black to be trying to connect up to the stone in the center, but the fact that white has these moves, which are pretty much forcing, they would cut the black group off. And next move, black's going to die on the left side. So like if black adds a stone now, then white would be getting a big corner in the upper left corner.
I see.
And
okay.
So black doesn't really gain anything from trying to connect to the one stone. And I agree with the choice that black made here black actually is alive with Sente in this case.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it looks like black's just playing everywhere. And when I count the territory, it's not so good for black anyway. It's really strange that white is just virtually doing nothing and is winning anyway.
That is really strange.
It seems to indicate that white was just had an easy lead once white played that large nice move on the left side. And I'm talking about this stone here.
Yeah.
Since I'm talking about it, I should mark it.
Yeah.
Since white played this, it seems that white. My feeling was that it was good for white, but the way that AlphaGo is playing so tightly and simply with white and still winning the game is more than I had expected.
But it's a large knight's move off of a star point. I mean, which means that black could dive into the corner at any time. I mean, I'm just not. I totally. Okay, all right.
Black jump in anyway. Yeah. But the point is, up to this point, before this move, black had to worry about that group on the upper side a bit too. So this move is important. Playing this Kosumi on the second line is important because it lives for the upper side group. So black sort of needed to do that first before worrying about the corner. But yes, black does jump in. So of course, Alpha.
I can see so many moves in the eye. I have no idea what's going on in this game.
Well, you can see white's not really accomplishing enough, very much. But of course, black is not getting any more territory too. So what white has accomplished is that this territory on the lower side is being reduced a great deal.
Yes.
So it's down to something closer to 30 points.
30 points, yeah.
And we're going to see that we're going to see that happen on the board later. It's going to become more clear as more stones are added.
Okay.
But it's about 30 points now. So black has slightly more than 40 points in all.
Mm-hmm.
And white has this territory in the upper right corner, that is,
mm-hmm.
and this territory on the right side. And then white has all these little scraps and pieces of territory that add up to more than 10 points. A lot of stuff on the left side. And it all depends on what happens in the upper left corner. Like if black can scoop out the whole corner there, it looks like black can win maybe.
Absolutely.
But it turns out that that's going to be a bit difficult. Like if black tries to live in the corner, it's going to have a bad effect on black on the upper side.
Uh-huh.
And so black connects, white still plays here. Let's see, I made a variation for black trying to live in the corner. So that's good because I was just talking about it. When black does this kind of thing, black is alive. It's perfectly alive,
mm-hmm.
but has this forcing move here. And so this is going to be really a lot of trouble.
Oh, wow. You need a second eye. It's only got the one on the top.
Yeah, and this turns into a really complicated Smiggle problem, but my guess would be that it's going to die.
It's hard to see where it's going to get a second die there. That B is really fatal.
Yes, so that's an example of how it's really dangerous for black to live in the corner.
That's why white wasn't worried about the 3-3. Gotcha.
And stuff like this could happen, but that would just be reducing the corner. And it wouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, white would be getting something like 15 points in the corner area. And so it would be good enough for white to win.
Absolutely, yeah.
So black starts with that. And white's pulling back the stone here. This is a very strong, a thick move. And this is going to lead to the sudden ending of the game later on.
Okay.
Because it's taking away black's eyes. And that shape in the center there, it looks like it's a bent 4 living shape.
Uh-huh.
It's not alive.
I have a bad feeling about a clamp in the middle there that takes away the eye, but maybe I'm wrong.
The clamp doesn't work.
No.
There's going to be a different move that does.
Okay.
And so white plays here. This is white is finally starting this endgame sequence, right?
Yeah.
Threatening the ko at A, so black has to answer that. And this sets up the peep here.
Yeah, I've been wondering about if there was some. Actually, I was looking at the knight's move, how far white could get in there.
Mm-hmm. The peep is better, and what complicates this is that there's another peep at A, which is going to be
yeah.
Then
against the upper group, right?
Right group doesn't have eyes. So, like if black plays something like this, then if we have something like this happen, black has to back up there to save the upper right corner. And this is actually going to be
trashed, yeah.
Now this is going to be something like 25 points or something like that. I think I added some more to the variation. Let's see what. So it's something like this. White can still reduce. Later on, B is going to be a kind of a forcing move. So it's a very flat, small territory. It's much less than 30 points. So this would be better than the game. So I'll show you what happened in the game. Is black pushed through here when white peeped. Black pushed through here.
Resist, yeah.
Yeah, so with this exchange, what black has managed to do is black has managed to connect up in the center there. But black has to back off here. And again, when white plays this attachment here, the kosumitsuke, white is looking at peeps at B, looking at the cut at A, and looking at the peep at B. So there's a lot of trouble there that could happen. So, of course, black plays away. But this is a forcing move. Black just plays the ko once and then has to back off. And now this was sort of extra. White probably didn't even have to answer that move, but black eventually has to protect in the center. Like if black plays away, this is a big move. White's going to start with this maybe, and after B, after this stone here, there's all sorts of trouble brewing for black. Like if black would like to cut it.
Yeah, what happens if black cuts?
Oh, I didn't even put that variation. When black cuts here.
The wedge now, right?
The wedge there, the wedge or the peep. Like if black plays here, this kills the whole group.
Oh, even better. Yeah. Right.
It's just dead.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like there's trouble on this side too. It's not working, and there's trouble on this side too.
Oh, jeez.
So there's trouble all over the place.
That's going to be the name of this game. Trouble all over the place.
So if black plays here, there's still some trouble. Like if we have this kind of thing, there's still this move here. And it looks like black might be able to capture it, but that's going to be bad in the center. It's just going to be cut off.
Wow.
So there's all these bad things that can happen to black here. Let's see, I didn't even find a way for black to save the day. Like this would be bad because if black cuts, then white can do this again. And B is a forcing move basically. So black would be really forced to kneel down here a lot. And this would be just terrible. Like even now white can get some extra stuff here.
So I proves that bad aji is just bad aji. There's just right. There's no fixing bad aji. Right. I mean,
right. It's just terrible. Yeah.
it's just bad.
So this is an example of how white can squeeze black a lot in this corner. I made a lot of variations. Just about all of them are bad for black. So black really needs to put this stone in here, and it's still going to be reduced a little bit, but it's going to be better now. So white cuts here, and with this move, we could end up going into an endgame variation, which is going to be relatively close. But black plays here once, and white plays these two forcing moves, which are not really that meaningful. And then white comes down. So this is a point where black actually has to add a move to the left side. So I made this variation where black adds a move to the left side. This would be alive. White to the corner.
Right.
So black will continue here, and black has a nice continuation in the center here, which is threatening. Like if white does something like this is threatening to black can extend here and push through here, threatening to capture the 3 stones, and then capturing all these stones on the right. So this would be good for
that is very clever. I like that.
white. Has to answer at B there. That answer here, and the question is, what happens to white's group on the left?
I was just trying to look and see where the eyes are.
Well, if white had played at this point that black just played, white would be alive.
Yeah, of course.
The center here, white has this forcing move, which threatens to cut black off in the center. Like if black plays here, white can connect here and cut black off. White's going to win this semi.
Sure.
And so if black answers here, then this is actually a forcing move, because if black plays away, white can play here, again threatening the whole black group, and just play here to capture 4 stones.
Sweet. Yeah, that works.
So black answers that, and then it's easy for white to live. White can still force this sequence and then play here. So that's no good for black. It's just alive. So black could play maybe A at somewhere to protect against B, but that would still be white getting the upper left corner. It would be a relatively close game. And I would expect AlphaGo to be playing some more moves in that case. But it looks like it's going to be a win for white. And so again, although black has been working really hard here, it doesn't seem that I can find any way for black to win the game, even though black has been sort of busily playing all over the place. It's not being good enough.
But so black has to choose between the corner and the center now, right? I mean, it can't survive both, can it?
Well, the question is, was this an oversight by black, because the side group is going to die now?
Yeah.
So was it a careless mistake, you might say? And some people do say that AIs in general have trouble understanding life and death problems. And it's true of weaker AIs, but it's not really true of AlphaGo.
No, that's not something we've seen, at all.
But the cause of this weakness is that AIs using this system tend to think of in the whole board. And so it's not really looking at this left side locally.
Actually, I can sneak in a question that somebody had in the comments from Game 9. Somebody was asking, and I'm just paraphrasing here, but they were commenting on the strength of AlphaGo, and their question, which of course we don't have the answer to, but they wanted to know your thoughts on it, was, AlphaGo is so strong, but since people created AlphaGo, is it possible that another AI, there's other, as you've seen other AIs, are there going to be other AIs that could be as strong or stronger? What do you think?
Well, sure. Like AlphaGo is not perfect, as we see, and in the opening, it's just you could say AlphaGo is just making guesses at this point. Like the opening is an area, a stage of the game where the top human players have always admitted that we don't really know what the best moves are, and we're just making guesses. And that's why we have these fads like the Chinese opening and stuff like that, which are not necessarily better than the openings that we played before, but they're just what everyone is doing right now.
Or pushing the envelope of knowledge in terms.
Right, yeah. And so we don't really know what the best moves are. And it turns out the fact that AlphaGo is playing one way in a game and then it will have the same position and it will try a different move in a different game. It sort of indicates that AlphaGo is just guessing too. And it's playing moves that are good, look good to it. It's not necessarily playing a perfect game. So there's still some room for improvement. I think it should be clear that this system with the neural networks, is the best, and the deep learning system that they're using is the best system that we have right now. Is the system that everyone else is using. But as we see with AlphaGo, the more you develop it, the better it gets. It gets better and better. In the 2 years, about the 2 years that we've been looking at AlphaGo games, it's gone from what I would call a novice pro level when it played against Fan Hui, to a top level when it played least at all. Now it's beyond human level.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to continue to get better. But it's getting close to perfect towards the end of the game,
Mm-hmm.
provided you allow it to play those strange forcing moves that have no meaning but don't affect the result. It's just doing that to aggravate me.
But
Yeah.
but now you're anthropomorphizing yourself, I think.
Yeah.
But you know, things like those move, or things like where, you know, black is about to die, you know,
Yeah.
it's just, it makes you wonder, right?
Well, yeah. Well, in the case of AlphaGo, I would say that it was not really a mistake, and that again, black was choosing between two moves, and it probably knew that it was going to lose in both cases.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
But it was choosing this one. When black plays this Kosumi in the upper left corner and lives in the upper left corner, if black can live on the left side, then black's going to win the game.
Sure.
So it would be interesting to see for instance, what was the value network saying? Like if AlphaGo was making a mistake, then at this point of the game, it would be thinking that it was winning with black. It would be saying that black has a high winning percentage.
Right.
But if it knew what was happening, it would have a low percentage anyway. So it would be interesting to see what the value network was saying at this point for the black player, which would answer the question. But I do think that stronger. For instance, if the DeepMind stopped developing AlphaGo, then that would stop its development. It would stop its improvement at the game, and then any other people using the same system could just continue developing longer, and they would end up with a stronger player, I believe.
Right. And it's, you know, it's probably just a question of time before, you know, that happens, and also before we start getting access, you know, to this other information, and that's going to be a whole other level of analysis. I mean, when you're able, I mean, right now it's a black box to you, and you're trying to, you know, reverse engineer it, but at some point, you know, we can probably start making some, you know, predictions in terms of when, but at some point we're going to have that access, and that's going to be really interesting. But I want to see how this black group, what happens to this.
Just one other point is that we haven't even discussed the possibility that someone comes up with a better system.
Well, that's actually what the question was, whether it was somebody might be able to come up with a better system. And that is a really interesting question, right?
And it's really interesting, and I have no way of knowing, of course.
Sure.
Yeah. Like, we didn't expect someone to come up with something as successful as AlphaGo was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was 10 years ahead of schedule.
So this is the killing move here.
Oh, I missed it. I was so close. I was really looking at that clamp. The clamp just looks so promising. Doesn't quite work.
Like, this would be two eyes, and this would be too many stones inside black's eye. It would just be...
Right, too big eye. Yeah, two eyes.
Cutting first is good. Let's see what I did. I had that. This is the strongest reply that black can have, but it's just not alive, really. It's black can try to make trouble with the white group, but it's
just not working.
It's going to be a semi-eye with the white corner group against the black side group. Is
it even close?
Not even close. Like, it's going to be a difference. So that's not going to work. In the game black played here, threatening to cut white. Now, this is also a strong threat. Like, this is the move that I was suggesting for black to live with, because it does create that cut in the center. But again, it's the same story, because there's no way that black can win a semi-eye between these two groups. So it's just dead. Oh, this is the actual game, actually.
Oh, wow. That's so simple.
Just died.
Wow. I was looking for something much more complicated, but that just works. So the push threatening the cut just doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter anymore. Like, you mean this one, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Like, if black plays here.
No, the original. Your move, the push right in the middle.
This one.
Yeah.
The one here.
Yeah, that one. The white just ignores that, right?
White ignores it and captures the corner. And black does get something out of it by threatening white here. And like a relatively close game would be black playing something in the center, like this, I suppose. But then white would live here. And I did look into the end game in this case, but it looks like white's going to win. So this would be the closest game.
Right?
White would win. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just not working for black. So it's an unusual game, and that it ended up kind of in a crash for black.
Well, it's actually interesting and unusual in that, you know, it turned so quickly for white, you know, that right where you showed us. If you want to jump back to that for a sec, I mean, it's almost like the game turned on a dime. Yeah, right there, and you can feel it. It's almost like a temperature change.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it does. It's a very attractive move for white to play. Of course, capturing the lower right corner is cash, so some people would sort of like that for black too.
Yeah.
But I very strongly feel that this variation that I was showing is much better for black, and so this is the point where I would say the game changed when white played this move.
Well, your variation has a much more balance. You looked into some of the extent, things on that, because it's a much more balanced game with that, right? I mean, it just feels
the territory is balanced, yeah. And white will probably play at A to live in the corner, but black gets this structure on the left side, which is going to turn into territory.
Yeah, it just has a much more balanced feel. But I mean, and all of that stuff later on in the game, where white is just not even trying to kill, but just poking and sliding, and you know, it just almost feels like a cat. My cat's not around now, but a cat playing with a mouse. You know, so I'm not gonna kill the mouse. We're just gonna play with the mouse. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, could have died anyway.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. This was interesting game, Michael. Really. So this was game 12.
Yes.
Yeah, we've had a couple of really sort of, you know, game 10 was that really, you know, sort of I was just looking at it the other day again, actually, just a mind-bending game. Game 11 with the codes all over the place. This one with our first, you know, honest to God crash. Wow.
Yeah, I think it might be the first time. Yes.
Definitely.
There's a number of games that ended in a real resignation, I would say. Yeah. Quite a lot of the games are actually half pointers.
Yeah, this is
something like 40 almost.
Wow. Well, really cool game, very exciting, and we're really fun doing that. So, and many more to go. And I got to tell you, you've probably noticed, but you know, folks are really looking forward to these releases every Friday, and so big appreciation. Thanks to everybody who's watching. And again, a big shout out to both Babs Wanek and to Andrew Jackson. None of this would be possible without them. Also, Myron Souris. We should mention Myron Souris has been doing a lot of help on the back end with helping editing. And we should mention, we haven't talked about this for a while, even though we've all been working hard on it, but we are working on an ebook of the first 10 games. So with lots of additional commentary and putting it all together. So folks can look forward to that. I don't want to put a date on it because whatever it is won't be right. So it would be like an AlphaGo game, you know. But maybe for the Christmas stocking stuffer, maybe we can hope for that.
Okay.
So thank you, Michael. Thanks everybody for watching. See you guys next week.